The Trojan War is probably the most famous war ever fought. It gave us the Iliad, the Odyssey, the Trojan horse, and the founding myth of Rome. Nearly 3,000 years of poetry, art, and film all go back to this one war. But the whole thing started because someone wasn't invited to a wedding. Yeah, seriously. One missing invitation destroyed one of the greatest cities in the ancient world. A father sacrificed his own daughter just to get his ships out of the harbor. The greatest warrior alive quit fighting because his commander stole his girlfriend, and the whole war ended with the most famous trick ever pulled. So how did a missing wedding invitation lead to 10 years of war and the total destruction of Troy? Let's start with the party. The gods of Mount Olympus were celebrating a wedding. Every god was invited. Every god except one, Eris, the goddess of discord. And Eris didn't take it well. She crashed the party and tossed a golden apple onto the floor with one word carved into it: Callisti, to the fairest. 3 goddesses claimed it: Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. None were backing down. They went to Zeus. Which one of us is the fairest? I'm not answering that. You're king of the gods. Settle this. I'm king of the gods because I don't pick sides between you 3. Take it to someone else. Zeus sent them to Mount Ida near Troy, right here on the coast of modern-day Turkey. There they found a young Trojan prince named Paris who was living as a shepherd. Each goddess offered him a bribe. Hera promised power, Athena offered wisdom and victory in battle, Aphrodite promised the most beautiful woman in the world. So what do you say, shepherd boy? Power, wisdom, or the most beautiful woman alive? I'll take the woman. Smart boy. We'll see about that. And the most beautiful woman in the world was Helen, queen of Sparta, down here. She was already married. Helen was the wife of King Menelaus, but before she married him, dozens of Greek kings had competed for her hand. Her stepfather made every suitor swear an oath: whoever wins Helen, all the others must defend him if anyone tries to take her. Every suitor swore. Menelaus won. And that oath sat quietly for years, waiting to ruin everybody's life. Paris sailed to Sparta, was welcomed as a guest, and left with Helen. Whether she went willingly or was taken by force, the ancient stories disagree. Either way, she was gone. Menelaus went straight to his brother Agamemnon, king of Mycenae, over here, and the most powerful ruler in Greece. Paris took my wife, then we take his city. Agamemnon invoked the oath. Every Greek king who had competed for Helen was now bound to go to war. The fleet gathered at Aulis, right here. According to Homer's Iliad, 1,186 ships from 29 kingdoms. But they couldn't leave. The winds had died. The goddess Artemis was furious with Agamemnon, and the fleet sat in the harbor going nowhere. The price she demanded was his daughter, Iphigenia. The goddess demands a sacrifice. Your daughter. My daughter? There has to be another way. There isn't. The fleet stays here until she dies, or you go home. Agamemnon lured Iphigenia to Aulis by telling her she was going to marry Achilles. Instead, she was led to an altar. In one tradition, she died. In another, Artemis snatched her away and left a deer in her place. Either way, the price was paid. Agamemnon's wife, Clytemnestra, never forgave him. Remember that. It matters later. Now there was one man the Greeks needed above all others. A prophecy said Troy could not fall without Achilles, son of the sea goddess Thetis. But Thetis knew her son was fated to die at Troy, so she hid him on the island of Skyros over here, disguised as a girl living among the king's daughters. Odysseus tracked him down and laid out gifts for the princesses: jewelry, fine fabrics, and one sword. When a trumpet blast rang out, every girl screamed and ran, except for one, who grabbed the sword. Found you. How did you know? Princesses don't reach for swords. Achilles chose a short life and eternal glory over a long life nobody would remember. The fleet sailed, and the siege began. So why did the war last 10 years? Because neither side could finish the other off. Troy's walls were enormous. According to the myth, they had been built by the gods Poseidon and Apollo themselves. The Greeks couldn't breach them, the Trojans couldn't drive the Greeks off the beach. For 9 years, the two armies ground against each other along the Trojan plain right here. The Greek side was stacked. Achilles was the greatest fighter alive. Odysseus was the brains. Ajax the Great fought like a one-man wall. But the Trojans weren't outmatched. Hector, eldest son of King Priam, was the one man who could stand against anyone except Achilles. His brother Paris, whose beauty contest had started all of this, preferred a bow to a sword and was not exactly popular with his own people. For 9 years, neither side broke, but in the 10th year, everything fell apart. And not because of the Trojans. Homer's Iliad only covers a few weeks of this final year, and it doesn't open with some great battle. It opens with a petty argument between the Greek commander and his best soldier. Agamemnon had seized a woman whose father was a priest of Apollo. When he refused to return her, Apollo sent a plague that killed Greek soldiers by the hundreds. Agamemnon gave her back, but to save face, he took Briseis, Achilles' own war prize, as compensation. You want my prize because you had to give yours back? You greedy coward! I'm the supreme commander. Watch your tone. You're the commander of nothing without me. I'm done fighting your war. Achilles pulled out of the battle entirely. The greatest warrior in the army sat in his tent and refused to fight. He asked his mother to convince Zeus to let the Trojans win, just so the Greeks would realize how badly they needed him. It worked. Hector led the Trojans all the way to the Greek ships. The camp was being overrun. Achilles' closest companion, Patroclus, couldn't stand watching any longer. Let me fight. Give me your armor. When the Trojans see it, they'll think you're back and they'll run. Fine. Push them from the ships, but don't chase them to the walls. Come back. Patroclus drove the Trojans back, but he didn't stop. He pushed to the very walls of Troy, and there, Hector killed him, stripped the armor from his body, and wore it as his own. Achilles' grief shook the camp. His mother brought him new armor forged by the god Hephaestus. Achilles returned to the battlefield with one purpose: find Hector. He chased Hector 3 times around the walls of Troy while both armies watched. When Hector finally turned to fight, Achilles drove a spear through his throat. He lashed the body to his own chariot and dragged it in the dirt. For 12 days, he dragged Hector's body around the tomb of Patroclus, but the gods wouldn't let it be destroyed. Aphrodite anointed it with oil, Apollo shielded it from the sun. One night, an old man walked through the Greek camp alone, King Priam, father of Hector. Guided by Hermes into the tent of the man who had killed his son, he knelt and kissed Achilles' hands, the hands that killed his children. I have done what no man has ever done. I have kissed the hands of the man who killed my sons. Think of your own father. He's old like me. He waits for you to come home. Let me take my boy home. Achilles wept. He thought of his own father, whom he would never see again. He returned the body. The Iliad ends not with victory, but with the funeral of Hector, breaker of horses. But the war was far from over. What happened next survives mostly through the summaries of lost poems called the epic cycles, and it cost the Greeks almost as much as the first 9 years. Achilles killed more of Troy's allies, including the Amazon queen Penthesilea and the Ethiopian king Memnon. But Paris shot Achilles with an arrow guided by Apollo. The greatest warrior in the Greek army was dead. The famous story about his heel? That was from a Roman poet writing over 1,000 years later. No magical heel in Homer. Achilles' divine armor needed a new owner. Ajax the Great believed it was rightfully his, but the leaders awarded it to Odysseus. I carried his body off the battlefield. That armor is mine. The armor goes to Odysseus. Then there's no honor left in this army. Ajax lost his mind. He slaughtered a herd of cattle, thinking they were Greek commanders, and when he came to his senses, he fell on his own sword. Best fighter and second best fighter, both gone. But captured Trojan prophets revealed what the Greeks still needed: the bow of Heracles, the son of Achilles, and a sacred image of Athena hidden inside Troy. Odysseus got all 3. Philoctetes used Heracles' arrows to kill Paris. The man who started a war with a choice was ended by a weapon from a man the Greeks had thrown away. Every prophecy fulfilled, but the walls still stood. So Odysseus came up with one last idea: build a giant wooden horse, hide soldiers inside, leave it at the gates, and sail away. The craftsman Epeius built it in 3 days. Ancient sources disagree on how many warriors fit inside. Some say 23, some say 50. Nobody says it was comfortable. The army sailed behind the island of Tenedos right here, just out of sight. They left behind one spy. Sinon let himself be captured and told the Trojans the horse was sacred. Bring it inside the walls and Troy would be protected forever. Not everyone bought it. The priest Laocoon hurled a spear into the horse's flank, but moments later, 2 sea serpents rose from the water and crushed him and both of his sons. The Trojans figured the gods had made their point. Cassandra, Priam's daughter, screamed that Troy would burn. Apollo had given her the gift of prophecy and a curse. She would always see the future. Nobody would ever believe her. The horse is a trap. They're hiding inside it. Troy burns tonight. Cassandra, you say that about everything. Because everything I say comes true. and none of you ever listen. They didn't listen. The Greeks are gone. This is their offering. Bring it inside. What if Lao Kun was right? Lao Kun is dead. The gods killed him for doubting. Do you want to be next? The Trojans dragged the horse through the gates and celebrated into the night. When the city fell silent, the Greeks climbed out, threw open the gates, and the army poured in from Tenedos. Troy burned. Neoptolemus, son of Achilles, killed old King Priam at the altar of Zeus in his own courtyard. Hector's infant son, Astyanax, was thrown from the walls so he could never grow up to avenge his father. He was a baby. The women of Troy were divided as slaves. Hector's widow, Andromache, went to Neoptolemus, the son of the man who killed her husband. And Cassandra was dragged from the temple of Athena by Ajax the Lesser. That crime was so vicious that Athena, the goddess who had spent 10 years helping the Greeks, turned against them completely. Troy, one of the wealthiest cities of the Bronze Age, was gone. But winning the war was the easy part. Getting home was the real punishment. Athena sent storms that scattered the Greek fleet. Ajax the Lesser survived his shipwreck by clinging to a rock and shouted that he had beaten the gods. Poseidon split the rock and drowned him. He really should have kept that one to himself. Agamemnon, the supreme commander who launched 1,000 ships, sailed home to Mycenae right here. His wife, Clytemnestra, was waiting. She had never forgiven him for sacrificing Iphigenia 10 years earlier. Remember when I said that would matter? Welcome home, husband. I've drawn you a bath. She and her lover murdered Agamemnon the day he walked through the door. The man who destroyed Troy didn't survive his first night home. Menelaus and Helen were reunited after 8 years of wandering, and Odysseus, his trip home took another 10 years. Cyclops, witches, sea monsters, angry gods, but that's a story for another video. On the Trojan side, the prince Aeneas escaped the burning city carrying his elderly father on his back. Centuries later, the Roman poet Virgil claimed Aeneas reached Italy and became the ancestor of Rome. The greatest empire the ancient world ever produced traced its origin back to a refugee from Troy. So, was any of this real? There's a mound in northwestern Turkey right here called Hisarlik. Heinrich Schliemann started digging there in the 1870s, convinced he had found Homer's Troy. He was partly right. The site holds 9 layers of cities, but one layer stands out. Troy 7a, destroyed around 1180 BC, shows evidence of fire, scattered human remains, and piles of sling stones. Something violent happened there. Something that looks a lot like a siege. And the names match. Hittite records from the same era mention a kingdom called Wilusa. That sounds a lot like Ilios, the Greek name for Troy. They also mention a power across the sea called Achilles. That sounds a lot like Homer's Achaeans. The geography lines up, the dates are close. Did the war happen exactly the way Homer told it? Almost certainly not. But something happened at that city roughly 3,200 years ago. Something bad enough that people never stopped telling the story. The founding myth of one of the greatest empires ever built. And the whole thing started because someone forgot to invite one goddess to a wedding. If you'd rather listen than watch, whether you're cooking, driving, working, gaming, or falling asleep, we're on Spotify too. Links in the description.